The question posed, when does life begin, was in relation to the abortion topic. And when is it okay? When is it okay or not okay to abort a baby? Or when does a bundle of cells actually become a living being, a sentient being, this, that, and the other, all these discussions. For me, life has already begun, and once it's begun, it can only stop at death. So life is only a continuation of itself. Life does not come from unlife. So here's the thing. When a man or a woman, a male or a female, come together, they have intercourse. The sperm travels to the egg. The sperm is alive. The sperm comes from life. The sperm comes from a live male who just intentionally participated in the act of procreation with a female who is also alive. The egg inside her is alive. When those two pieces of life meet, in the egg, or the sperm enters the egg, there's a spark of energy. So you have the male, you have the female, and you have the spark of energy. Consider that how you'd like. I kind of look at it like the divine energy. The energy of nature, the energy of life itself, creation, the created. The two coming together to form one with that third, that the trinity that comes together that makes it an individual, unique life inside another life. So those cells, once they combined, they became a whole separate life due to the act of procreation by two living beings. So that is life already. Since I started talking just this short little bit of time, according to these numbers that keep ticking, now over 300 worldwide. 300 worldwide they will not get a chance to consider and ponder these questions about their own lives because their own lives have already started and ended. But they were ended due to the decision of someone outside them. Though they were inside another at the time, that life was theirs because that life and that spark was produced by the actions of two living beings that made a third. So, consider that. I'm not sure how many folk even know over 300 other men and women in their own personal life, in real life, that they know well. Were you to know that many folks well, 300 folk. Imagine if someone had made that decision for all those folks that you know and decided they wouldn't get that chance at life and they weren't here due to no choice of their own. Whole life experiences not coming to fruition, not getting a chance to be lived because someone else decided something. That's how I look at things now. And I know others, and I used to do the same. I used to do the but and the what if and the justification for this, that, and the other. Like one of these categories here, this year, or U.S., this year, due to rape and incest, 1,029.9. See, those are the kind of situations where two wrongs don't make a right. It as hard as that might seem to someone imagining someone that got raped and then got impregnated, to say two wrongs don't make a right. It was wrong that you got raped. It's going to be wrong to do the abortion, so it's not going to make it right, you know. However, comma, and I know this is one of the buts, like how, you know, how could you go through something like that? A constant reminder every day, you know, that child, a constant reminder. I get it. I get it. And this is what I have to say about that. Those situations should never occur. Those situations would not occur in a moral society, in a society where folk are raised to know true morality, to know truly right from wrong, and most importantly, to know themselves deeply. Because for me, when I really considered a few years ago all the depths of things I could to the best of my ability within myself and my own energy and how I used it and this and that, one of the things I considered deeply was the sexual energy part. And I realized that was a big part of me being locked into the animalistic mindset and state I was in, the base consciousness, the five sense reality material world, only focused on what I could see, hear, touch, that type of thing. Only about the senses, nothing about anything deeper, only the surface layer of reality. And being locked into that state, and watching the program I was watching, the television shows, the movies, the this and that, the things I grew up with, the things everyone around me that I knew grew up with. It drove these thoughts to just play through my mind, and I had a totally different view of reality than I do now. Back then, I believed what I was taught, things, this and that about our nature and the nature of man and woman and our sexual energy, and you know the whole thing about males like spreading their seed, you know, and the way women are sexualized and this and that. Really, I came to the conclusion, realization that really it was just to drive the whole society into this base consciousness, over sexualized, over stimulated state of mind and being, just totally confused about themselves. And to use that sexual energy, like for me in my case, as a male, to go ahead and, yeah, masturbate if you want because it's healthy. You got to keep the pipes working, right? This and that and the other. I would hear these types of things. And so, you know, I was one of those dudes that had no shame. I was like, yeah, I masturbate, yeah, I beat off all the time. I don't care. You know, I didn't care. I had no shame. And what's funny about that is a few years ago I realized that's exactly the state of consciousness I was living in for quite a few years, was that state of shame consciousness. Because deep inside I was so ashamed of what I had become, so dark and just a base creature I was, because I thought I was just another animal, and I thought I was doing all the right things for the right reasons and this and that and the other, and I was misusing my energy. What I ended up realizing these past few years was really back before puberty and in puberty, and during that time especially, that's when me, as a young male, I should have been taught about my own sexual energy. I should have, you know, that's when the teaching for boys and girls who later become men and women, that's when they really need it, and they need to understand themselves and understand that these instincts that they have attraction and this and that. You know what? That whole sexual instinct is just that. It's an instinct. It's an instinct for procreation. That instinct is meant to be not suppressed and not overstimulated and used like that. It's meant to be mastered. The instinct, all of our instincts within us are meant to be mastered. The instinct to protect life, to care for life, and then to create and to carry on life, as in reproduction. All of these instincts are meant to be mastered, because if they're not mastered and if they're acted on in impulse without understanding, clear understanding within, well, then you get this oops, mistake here, mistake there, shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. Now what are we going to do about it? Got a problem, got to fix it. Problem shouldn't have happened in the first place. Though due to a lack of education, just in general, in society, especially about ourselves and what we are, and that we're more than animals, and it's not only just the 5 sense role. We're much more than that. The spirit is the thought and the emotion that manifests in mind. The mind is very much a part of the body. It's in the body, it's material, it's the physical. But your spirit manifests in that physical vessel, but then there's the soul. The soul is that third part, the Trinity. So to use that excuse that we're just animals, we're just like the other animals, it doesn't work for the soul inside oneself. You could tell yourself that, and the mind can play ping pong with the ideas back and forth between the logic and the creativity that's half asleep upstairs, and contradictory thoughts about things can be held at the same time in an imbalanced mind. Whole time, though, it's doing damage to that soul, that third part, that holy Trinity that's within, that might be asleep and might be very unholy at this point, depending on how many contradictory ideas are held within oneself and then acted upon, such as the idea of, are you a good person? Are you a moral good person that protects and cares for life? Because if the answer is truly yes, then how can you choose to end a life outside your own, to take a life, or to harm a life? Doesn't really work. Same thing with a lot of things. A lot of contradictory ideas are taught and then taught to be believed, so they're held with just belief, because in a state of belief, it's not knowing. So as long as you don't know for sure one way or another, you hold contradictory ideas just believing they're both true at the same time, when it is impossible, because there's no contradictions in nature. Nature doesn't work like that. The creator doesn't work like that. Can't name the creator for you. Wouldn't try to do it. It's not my place. But I do know that I had a creator. My creator was my mom and dad. I had no choice in being here. And they did not make the choice to decide after they created me to stop me from being here. And even though it turns out this world is horribly dark, I appreciate them for it, because if I didn't get this chance, I wouldn't have gotten a chance to experience and learn what I've learned and know what I know now. And by knowing what I know now, I can know not to repeat the mistakes that I made for the whole first part of my life. Furthermore, I'm now at a point, of course, where I can communicate those messages, especially to my kids, and correct some of the damage that I did, along with all the other folks within the systems that taught them coming up, able to correct that nonsense for them much sooner than I was able to do it for myself. So I am very thankful for that. No, it's just the fact that so many, like, oh man, it's so many of these products that have fetal tissue used in these products. Flavonoids, they call them. Salmonex. HEK 293 cells is one of the cell lines, human embryonic kidney cells, line 293. But there's other cells as well that come from this industry of abortion. You know, there's businesses, corporations, because everything's a corporation, to procure body parts of these babies, aborted fetuses, to be used in things anywhere from research to things like Salmonex, and to go into products that get fed back to the public in the food. It's stuff like that makes you realize you live in a world of vampires, and it's nasty. It's just plain nasty. Whether it's physical vampires, psychic vampires, energy vampires, it's all the same. It's all the same in different forms is what it is. Different forms and different costumes, but all built on this life-sucking vampiric system on top of system on top of system on top of system, all being run by actors that have been infected by this vampiric virus of whatever you want to call it. Evil, greed, Satan, the devil, vampirism, man, I don't care, whatever. Some kind of dark, evil, fungal infestation of the individual. As they get darker, they swell more and more. Their bodies swell because the fungus is all within, throughout all their pores and the fluids, and not their pores, sorry, but the fluids, the fluid sacs, the synovial fluid, everything within the joints, all areas where the fungus can grow, where maybe the fungus has its own sentience, just dark energy that builds and grows. And I don't know, maybe it's something like that, maybe not, because maybe it is. It seems like, to me, as I look out there, the folks that are getting more and more materialistic are further and further away from true morality or goodness or God or spirituality or whatever. The further they sink into this materialistic, whether they tout all the spirituality terminology and this and that, no matter what they say, it's what they do. If they're still doing the same things, if they're still locked in this materialistic modality of living, in this modality of holding contradictory thoughts in their mind at the same time, it seems to me those folks are swelling faster than others. The folks that are keying in and seeing reality really for what it is, and most importantly, them for what they are, and that they're more than what they were taught, those folks seem to be healing. They're putting things together mentally, physically, spiritually, their soul coming to life, a light shining like from within them that you can see, that everyone can see, that I've noticed even the most shut-off materialistic modality folk notice the ones that are getting healthier and the light is shining within them. They draw attention. I've seen it. Though the ones that are looking at them with that swelling and through that fog, that haze, that mind fog they're in from the constant bombardment of programming and frequencies and toxins that are already in their body, they can't quite clearly comprehend what they're looking at. And what they're looking at is they're looking at an individual that's truly alive and living life and is connected within themselves. And they can't quite get that cognizantly. They can't quite grasp that because they can't quite feel that because they're quite confused inside still because of the bombardment of the programming and the toxins inside themselves and the cascading failure of health, to be quite honest, with a lot of folk that are eating the kind of stuff I grew up eating. In my 20 year plus alcoholic bender adventure at the same time as having a pretty physically intensive career in the death arts, uh, which kind of I did not mean for it to go that way. I thought I was doing the whole protector thing. Turned out no, we were kind of used in a totally opposite way of that, and we're used to attack. But that was my lack of knowing that led me down that path. Because I was confused because of all the toxins within me and all the programming that I had been bombarded with, and I was playing out the fantasy role that I had picked, thinking it was real life because it was real. It was all quite real, and it all really happened. Just now that I can see and feel deeper and know how this has all been set up and can see it clear as day now. It is so absolutely insane to me when I try and think back on that shell of an individual I was, that I don't know how I functioned, quite honestly. It's like trying to remember back into the life of another because I was so disconnected. And now within me and in me, I've known what true morality means now. I know that, yes, there is indeed a God. There is a creator. There is, I know that I am a creation within creation and that I did not create this, though something surely did. And that everything that I had inside me, all those contradictory things and thoughts I had, and then the actions I took based on those, none of those were hidden. All those things I had tucked away in all the darkest parts of me that were just, no, none of those were hidden. Those were all seen, those were all watched, observed, and cataloged. And those were waiting to be paid for inside me as I got to finally figure out what know thyself really meant. When does life begin? It already began. It already began for all of us that are here right now. It can only end for us. And we should not be choosing to end lives that are not ours. And that's been the problem all along. Been taught to do it, been programmed to do it, been paid to do it, been trained to do it. Think about those decisions. And then think about later, how will you justify that? To me, to get back to the sperm and the egg and that very on purpose act of intercourse and procreation, that's a choice. I hope, because if it's not a choice, if it is rape, of course, that is, no one No one has that right. No one has the right to harm another. No one has the right to commit these immoral acts for any justification. Just don't. It's really that simple. And someone writing down on a piece of paper saying it's okay to do it does not make it okay. Someone could write down on a piece of paper, say it's okay to hurt someone because of whatever reason. Kill someone, lock them away, enslave them, do this, do that, do something else to them. They have no authority to do that. None of us have the authority to do that. We have the authority to rule ourselves, to govern ourselves, to self-govern, control. Not a government, not control of mind, but control of self, to govern self, self-control. And that self-control comes from knowing thyself and not being full of poisons and toxins and mind-altering petrochemical concoctions that the mind rapists will prescribe you, the therapists. That's why it's spelled the rapist therapist. Mind rapists with a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of after studying that, I could get into a whole bunch of nonsense on that nonsense psychology, which is not nonsense because you're supposed to know your own. Don't go to them. Don't go to someone to let you know about you. You figure out you. You have the capability. You have more than enough capability to figure out you as long as you can get a chance to. Hard part is realizing that you haven't got yourself all figured out. When you're full of poisons, when you were poisoned from birth and you never realized what it felt like to be whole. Something I noticed. That's why it took me so long to figure anything out for myself, to know anything for myself. So before then, it was all belief. Before then, I would have been asking a question like that. When does life begin? Those kinds of questions instead of going, wait, I'm alive. I am a life. I live. I should be absolutely qualified to talk about this question or answer this question for myself and not have to ask this question. Of course, for so much of my life, I wasn't able to. Now, everything is much clearer, infinitely clearer. These numbers here on the screen also, these are just the choice someone made not to have a baby. That's what caused these deaths, these numbers. Worldwide since 1980, 1.5 billion. This should show the problem with the lack of morality, with moral relativism, with the way society has been taught. With the programming that society has continued to be programmed with, to be bombarded with. One of the biggest reasons to me that this is such a problem, that in not just this, but anything that is keeping us enslaved right now, which take your pick. The problem is that the majority of us were shut off at some point throughout our lives due to the combination of the so-called medicine, the vaccines, the television programming, and the diet, what we are eating. There is so much toxicity from the physical to the mental to the spiritual in those categories. That combined with the human being's amazing ability to mimic, to learn by mimicry, to see something and then act it out and repeat it, or to hear something, internalize it in the mind, and then repeat it, or to act on it, to mimic what's been taught or shown or told. And we can do that without knowing the why of what we're doing or the depth to what we're doing. We can do these tasks with a lack of knowledge just by repeating actions or repeating information. That's how the programming works. The programming shows situations on cartoons and these ridiculous other shows with real life folk running around actors. They show all these situations. They show their actions and reactions within these situations. They fill it with a lot of belief, a lot of this and a lot of that, and then folks see it and they internalize it and they act it out in their lives. They become actors. Same thing with school. You go to school, you sit there and you learn, you hear things and you repeat things and you write things down and you write it down over and over and over until it's ingrained. But you're only mimicking what you've been taught. You don't know the depth of it. You don't know it. You don't know until you know. Then later you find out the way all these systems are running, the way they're built just on that alone. On a bunch of men and women mimicking belief that's been set up and taught to them without knowing anything deeper than just the belief of what they've been taught in the system they've been taught, the lingo they've been taught within that system, and they stay within that system. That's the problem. The problem is all the systems. The systems are there to serve themselves, not any of us.